IUIC versus Halloween. Yep, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Hope everybody's having a good time at the the Lord's Day. Hope everybody had a good time at church. They were edified through the word. Has some vibrant fellowship as well. And we gotta say what's up to the party people in the chat. We got Angela J on the check-in. And of course, if you have not yet already, please like, share, and subscribe. We try to get the 5K before year's end, and that can't happen unless you, the party people, really just come in the clutch and just spread the word. So please share the link, tell a friend that it's him again. And of course, if you like how it goes down with BK and you want to be a monthly supporter, you can check out the Patreon where I get an assortment of goodies to enhance your personal Bible study. And with me tonight, for the first time on the platform, is Rated B by Dre. What's going on,
How y'all doing? Man, it's good to be here, man. The B stands for biblical, by the way.
Yeah, I was about to ask. I'm like, what's the B?
Yeah. Yes, the B stands for biblical, man. We keep things with the Bible, by the Bible, all the time. It's great to be here, man.
Nice. And tell, this is the time for you to plug shamelessly, where we can, find you at on these interwebs.
Yeah, so of course you can find me on Rated B by Dre. B stands for biblical, on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm also on TikTok. I go live there from time to time. If on Facebook, full name DeAndre Richardson, and that's where you can find me. We have things on Hebrew Israelites, false messiahs, and just theological lessons on what is God, what is the Bible, who is Jesus, et cetera, et cetera. So you can find me in all those. And if you like what you see, give a like, subscribe, a follow, all that good stuff.
In other words, he's a bully on these streets. If you want to smoke, I'm playing.
No, I mean, hey, look, we can do that too.
We do that too. We can offer that service as well. I like that.
Right.
Big up to my man Jordan Blake. Was good. We got Intellectual Saltbox on the check-in. So, Dre. So, as you know, in October, we have entered spooky season.
Yes.
And for many of us, it's a very interesting time of year. I like it because it's no longer humid in New York. That's for us. I'm sure it's still hot over by you, but
yeah, it is.
It's the trees, the leaves start changing color. Everybody gets into the pumpkin latte thing, which I could care less about. But I'm a coffee drinker, but the whole pumpkin thing is just overrated. Like, you can't put pumpkin in everything, fam. Like, stop it. Stop it. Like, come on. I know it's fall, but don't, But anyway, right. So of course, Halloween is coming to us soon. And we know that for many people, they have some issues with the day for various reasons. And we know that, IUIC likes to make mention of it and accuse Christians of embracing paganism when it comes to this day. So, Dre, what are some of your thoughts when it comes to not just IUIC, but just like One West Hebrews when it comes to these accusations about these quote-unquote pagan days?
No, that's great. So, of course, with the biggest thing that we see a lot of times when it comes to One West Hebrew Israelites, or any Hebrew for that matter, the biggest issue that they have when it comes to pagan holidays, from what I've seen, is the lack of what they would classify as biblical evidence for it. The biggest thing they'll always say to Christians is, where did the Most High tell you to keep Halloween, to keep Christmas, to keep Easter? And so the thought behind it is, if God didn't tell you to do it, then why are you doing it, right? It's the big claim of it's pagan. It goes back to this God. It goes back to this particular festival or this particular feast, what have you. However, one thing I also see is that these claims lack what I think you and I would call historical evidence. It's a lot of parroting. It's a lot of, I watched a YouTube video. I did a Google search real quick.
Yeah,
Is
I found a
Christian?
meme. I found this
Yeah, I
meme.
found a
Yeah.
meme, and oh, this meme says it's pagan, so it's got to be pagan, right? So it's a lot of claims, but very lack of evidence. Is what I've seen.
Right. And I want to just put out a caveat. This is by no means me trying to persuade you to even participate in Halloween. That's not what
Right,
this is about. Well,
right,
what I want to share is that if other believers' children, want to dress up as Captain America or strawberry shortcake or whatever, don't look at them with a side eye and think they're not doing well spiritually, right?
right.
And also, it's about people like IUIC and the conscious community and various other detractors of the faith will use this as a critique against the
Yes,
church, right?
yes, they will.
So what we're going to do today is, now I know that IUIC has various videos about their claims about Halloween, but what I decided to do, Dre, is I went to their website,
Yes,
right? Because that's, I'm assuming, is their official stance on Halloween. So
yes.
we're going to look at what they have said about Halloween, and we're going to give some commentary. All
Let's
right.
do it.
All right. So with that being said, so if you go to the website, you'll find this page for Halloween, right? IUIC.
Hmm.
And this is one of the first claims they make. Dre, if you could be so kind to read this for us.
Yeah, I got you. So they say Halloween was originally a festival of fire that honored the dead and the powers of darkness. It is celebrated on the evening of October 31st and continues past 12 midnight, the start of November, which is the beginning of the Christian festival of All Hallows Day, now called All Saints Day, which commemorates dead saints and martyrs and was first introduced in the 7th century. All Saints Day date was changed from May 13th to November 1st in the 8th century to make it coincide with and Christianize a pagan festival of the dead.
Right. So I want you to keep in mind the dates, right? They're saying that
Yeah.
this particular festival was introduced in the 7th century, and that somehow we co-opted this other pagan festival, and instead, right? So this is the claims they're
Right.
making. So want to look at this individual by the name of Tom O'Neill. He's an atheist, skeptic, and rationalist. He has a bachelor's degree with honors in English and history and a research master's degree from the University of Tasmania with a specialization in historic analysis of medieval literature. And he has a website called History for Atheists. And what I find interesting about this gentleman is that, well, obviously he's not a Christian apologist, right?
Right.
He does not believe that God even exists. So both us and IUIC would have issue with this gentleman just on that
You
alone.
would.
But because he doesn't believe in God, his thing is, if you're going to go against theists, don't make up stuff to go at them.
Right.
Right. So, because he's noticed that other atheists will just fudge and make up stuff and just create propaganda to go at believers in God. So,
Right.
what his whole thing is, let's get the history straight. So,
Right.
he made a whole website for atheists. He's like, look, this is what actually happened. So, stop with the nonsense. All right. So he comes from a very unique perspective. So, with that being said, he talks about this thing called Halloween. As
Mhm.
All Saints Day, as the name would suggest, is a commemoration held in several Christian denominations of all those deceased believers who have attained heaven. In the Western tradition, it's followed by All Souls Day on November 2nd for the remembrance of the dead generally. The veneration of the triumphant dead is a very old tradition in Christianity and seems to have its origin in the cults of martyrs in the first centuries of the religion's history. Annual commemoration of martyred Christians appear in the sources very early on with the martyrdom of Polycarp, 150 to 200 AD. So remember, they said that these Christians would start, commemorating the death of believers 7th century. But
Right.
actually, we have proof that they've been doing it since 2nd century with
Mhm.
people like Polycarp, right?
Right. Mhm.
This is from the Sacred Faith. Dre, you can read this for us.
You sure? The next reference comes from 250 AD. In Epistles 36 of Cyprian, he states that the church should take note of the days in which the martyrs are killed. Finally, also, take note of their days on which they depart, that we may celebrate their commemoration among the memorials of the martyrs. There are celebrated here by us oblations and sacrifices for their commemorations. There are also other references to this practice in sermons by Ephraim the Syrian and John Chrysostom. So we can see from the existing historical documents that celebrating the lives of martyrs and saints has now been long observed within the church, with the first recorded being in what is now modern day Turkey.
Right. So many believers, you know, celebrated the passing of these Christian martyrs way before the 7th century. And also, as a bonus, the idea of paganism, right? The word
Yes.
pagan, um, it has because it's important for us to define terms, right? So
Right.
the claim is Halloween is of pagan origin. Well, the word pagan today doesn't have the same connotation as it did in antiquity,
Right.
because in antiquity, the word pagan from the Latin paganus actually means a non-combatant. It's somebody who
Mhm.
is a civilian. And
Right.
it was used in the military. Like if you're not part of the army, you are a
You are pagan.
pagan. So the Christians actually co-opt that term and made it part of their vernacular. So because they believe, as a believer, you're in the Lord's army.
Right.
So if you're not in the Lord's army, you are a civilian, you're a non-combatant, you are a pagan.
Pagan.
And
Mhm.
Dre, what is All Hallows Eve about? What are they celebrating?
They're commemorating those who have died in Christ. That's
Right,
literally what it is.
right. It's the spiritual version of Veterans Day.
You literally.
That's exactly what it is. So, by definition, it is literally not a pagan holiday. It's
Literally.
not for non combatants, it's strictly for soldiers of Christ, period.
Yes.
So, just, just,
And
just to put that out there as an
and
added
no,
bonus.
and that's good, and that's good, man, because one thing you see very clearly when it comes to just this part of the evidence is number one, this idea of celebrating martyrs is a part of the Christian history. This
Right,
idea of, hey, let's honor those who have fought their lives for the faith, who have fought their lives for the gospel, right? And the unfortunate part is, and what I want to, and what I personally believe is for IUIC to have that on their website, meaning they know what the history actually says, but that wouldn't go well with their agenda to try to paint Christians in a bad light. So what do you have to do? You have to take some other aspects to it, make it look like what you want it to look like without actually seeing what the full picture is, which is why
right,
IOIC is very deceptive from a historical perspective.
right. No, absolutely, absolutely. So, now that we know where it comes from, of course, the claim still will remain that somehow we co-opted this pagan
Right,
holiday and
right.
made it part of, right, Halloween somehow. And of course, what the day we're talking about is Samhain,
Shaolin.
right?
Shaolin.
So Dre, if you could be so kind to read this for us.
Of course, it says there is certainly some evidence that November 1st was a key date for several cultures across the Celtic language group, marking the end of summer. The Irish word Samhain seems derived from the ancient word meaning summer. A key piece of evidence here in the Colonji calendar, an inscribed bronze tablet discovered in southeast France in 1897. This represents a lunisolar calendar which reconciles moon phases with the solar year over a cycle of 5 years via the insertion of an occasional intercalary leap month, and it dates to the first century BC.
Right. So this word is basically a month, name of a month in an ancient Irish calendar. Okay. Um, the inscriptions on the calendar use Roman script and numerals, but the names of months on it are in the Celtic language of the ancient Gauls. These include a month called Samanos at the beginning of the year, derived from the Gaulish root samo, meaning summer. This is almost certainly a cognate with the Irish Samhain, but Samanos begin in May and did not fall in November, called Giamonios in the Cologne calendar. This means Samhain is a compound word meaning something like summer's end. So there's no like inherent evil thing in the word. It just means the end of summer. Right? So Dre, if you can read us.
Yeah, sure. It says the earliest reference to Samhain as a time of ritual, sacrifice, and Druidic ceremony comes in 1634
All right, stop
in the
right there.
count.
Stop right there. Stop right there. Because they said that we started doing this in the 7th century.
7th century.
To coincide with Samhain, right?
Yep.
We already saw that since Polycarp, they've been commemorating the death of the fallen soldiers of Christ.
Yes.
Now, this date that they said that we Christianize, the first reference is in the 1700s. But it gets worse, though. It gets worse. Continue, sir.
Cool. In an account by Cithrun Kelton or Geoffrey Keating, a priest, poet, and antiquarian from Tipperary, who Hutton describes as the thoroughly unreliable 17th century Irish antiquary. Keating's accounts mingles a few elements from the medieval sources with a lot of lurid fantasy.
So not only is the name of the month just summer's end, but the reference to any kind of Druidic ceremony doesn't happen until the 1700s. Until the 1700s, when Christians have been commemorating the martyrs since the 2nd century. We're talking a good 1,700 years prior to this. And then on top of that, we're not even sure what happened here because according to Hutton, Geoffrey Keating he's thoroughly unreliable.
Right.
He's not a little bit. He's off here and there. No. Thoroughly unreliable. He's a hack. He's a hack. All right?
Yeah.
Like Hutton, all other modern scholars reject this account as largely lurid fantasy on Keating's part, cobbled together out of references to fire rituals associated with other times of year, with a heavy layer of Keating's imagination. Unfortunately, as one of the few early and seemingly scholarly books on early Ireland, Keating's work was highly influential on later claims about Halloween's quote-unquote pagan origins. Here we find the Druids and the human sacrifice found repeatedly in later claims about the pre-Christian Halloween, along with a garbled origin story for the traditions around fires, which did feature as part of many Halloween practices. Dre, your thoughts?
Man, this is so good. So this is good for like 2 reasons. So one, this is why doing your own research is so important, because you first realize 2 things about this whole claim about Halloween being pagan. Number one, the idea of the name or the festival that people like to associate with Halloween that was not even what the festival was even about. That was the first thing. But then the second thing is the fact that people have tried to attach things like rituals, sacrifices, and all those other elements were add-ons. They were add-ons. That was never really what it was about. In fact, when you do your further research, the whole thing with Samhain, it was based upon agriculture. That was when the harvest was supposed to be given. Right. So even if you just look at it from its basic thing, it had nothing to do with the dead. It had nothing to do with spirits and ghouls or anything like that. It was an agricultural thing. So the fact that you see this information, and mind you, this is an atheist saying this stuff. Like this isn't IOIC can't say, oh, this is a Christian. No, this is an atheist that we both disagree with. And even he says the history about Halloween and this idea that the festival was pagan and ritualistic is historically false.
Absolutely. And it gets worse. It gets worse for these guys.
There's no way it gets worse.
It gets worse, sir. It gets worse. This is from The Stations of the Sun, A History of the Ritual Year in Britain by Ronald Hudson. Dre, please.
Yes, sir. Let me see. Make sure it comes up. Continue on my side. If you can read it, because I think I can't see it on my side, but go ahead. Oh,
can't
there
see
it
it
is.
yet?
Never mind. No, I got it right here. So it says his source is unknown, and the story implies an extremely unlikely degree of religious and political centralization in pagan Ireland. It may be that it is a mistaken transference of the custom of Beltane. When Keating's story is put aside, a considerable suspicion arises that the rites of Samhain do not feature in medieval Irish literature.
Say it again. Repeat
Simply,
that. Repeat
yep,
that.
yep. Rites of Samhain do not feature in medieval Irish literature. Simply because by the time that it was written, centuries after Christianization, the authors did not know what they had been.
So IUIC says that we Christianized Shaolin, but according to historians, this happens way after any Christianization. Way after. Because again, they commemorated the slaying of Christians but since the early 2nd, 3rd century.
Yes.
We don't know about this alleged Shaolin until the 1700s. And we know about it from a guy who was considered thoroughly unreliable.
Right.
So it's not looking good here. It's not looking good
at all.
Heavy Irish immigration into the Scottish Highlands and Isles in the early Middle Ages carried the name Samhain there and local variations, but to the Welsh, the day was Callan Gaif, the first day of winter, and the night before was termed Nos Galan Gaia, Winter's Eve. Perhaps significantly, the earliest Welsh literature attributes no arcane significance to these dates, in sharp contrast to May Eve, and describes no gatherings then, in sharp contrast to New Year. It must be concluded, therefore, that the medieval records furnish no evidence that the 1st of November, was a major pan-Celtic festival and none of religious ceremonies, even where it was observed. Nothing happened that was demonic or overtly evil that day. To like what Drake said, it's the end of summer. It's harvest time. Yay, pumpkins and turnips and that was going on. That was it.
That's all it was.
That's all it was. All right, and then back to IUIC, Dre. If you give me some time.
Here's what IUIC says. On All Hallows Eve, the pagans, I'm sorry, it's this word pagans there. The pagans hollowed out turnips, rutabagas, grows, potatoes, and beets. They placed a light in them to ward off evil spirits and keep an undead soul named Jack away. These were the original jack-o'-lanterns. In the 1800s, a couple of waves of immigrants came to America. These new immigrants quickly discovered that pumpkins were bigger and easier to carve out, so they used pumpkins for jack-o'-lanterns.
Now, there's some semblance of truth here.
Yes, there
meaning
is.
that these people, who had this cultural tradition, they did bring something to the Americas.
They did.
And the Americas were using pumpkins in a certain fashion, but not the way IUIC is talking about. Okay, so we're gonna look at a book entitled "Trick or Treat: A History of Halloween" by Lisa Morton.
Nice.
And she says here, towards the end of the 19th century, this ain't ancient, 19th century, Halloween in America was in the process of acquiring what would become its most popular icon, the jack-o'-lantern carved from a pumpkin. The legend of Jack, the blacksmith who outwits the devil, appears in hundreds of variants throughout both Europe and America, and typically ends when Jack dies and being denied entrance to either heaven or hell, instead wanders the earth with his way lit only by an amber held in a carved out turnip. So
Mm,
this is one component of how we get to the jack-o'-lantern. It's
yeah.
based on a story of Jack the blacksmith, who outwits the devil.
Interesting.
Now, he's also not a good guy either. That's why he's not allowed into heaven. But Satan don't want him either. See, so he's stuck. So he
He's
walks
stuck.
around with this lantern with a carved out turnip. And here's a picture of an individual with such a contraption. It says here in
Mm,
Britain, children had carved out Halloween lanterns from large turnips or Swedes. And in Scotland,
sweet.
there are contemporary reports of masked youngsters carrying carved lit turnips called neep lanterns and going from door to door asking, please help the geysers. At the
Mhm.
village of Heaton St. George in Somerset, a strange Halloween like festival called Punky Night falls on the fourth Thursday of October and involves children carving intricate designs into the skin of the Mongol Wurzel, a large beetroot like vegetable normally grown as cattle feed. Now, this is separate from the story of Jack the blacksmith,
Right.
right? But as these guys come to America, it gets cobbled together with that other story, all right?
Right. Mm,
In America, pumpkins, the large bright orange squash native to the New World and harvested in late autumn, have been carved into grinning faces for decades. Watch this, prior to the arrival of Halloween.
yep.
In 1820, Washington Irving immortalized the carved pumpkin in his story, The Legend of Sleepy
Legend of
Hollow.
Sleepy
You've
Hollow.
heard the story, Legend of Sleepy,
Yep.
right?
Uh-huh.
We've seen the
Mhm.
cartoon, we've seen the movie, right? And although the piece would later become a Halloween classic thanks to its combination of humor and fright, it made direct mention of the day.
Mm-mm.
I'll let you read this one, Andre.
Sure. In his poem, The Pumpkin of 1850, John Greenleaf Whittier links the pumpkin to another festival, Thanksgiving,
What
but
day?
goes
What
on
day? What day?
Thanksgiving,
Thanksgiving, man.
Thanksgiving, but goes on to recall carving wild, ugly faces in pumpkins lit from within by candles and telling fairy stories by their light. Jack-o'-lanterns aren't mentioned in most of the Halloween party descriptions from the 1860s and 70s. An 1880 article suggests that they aren't even as useful as cabbages at Halloween.
Right. But within a few years, the legends of Jack the Blacksmith, Washington Irving's Ichabod Crane, turnip carving from the old world, and the American tradition of cutting faces into the giant fruit would combine to create the Jack o' lantern.
That's it.
That's where we get it. It's a syncretism of various cultures, right? You got the ironsmith Jack who outwits the devil, which doesn't sound like a bad thing to outwit
Yeah.
the devil. You have these other young men with these turnips, carving turnips, going to place, getting food and treats, bringing that tradition to America, where they were already carving pumpkins on Thanksgiving, though, and you mix that with the legend of Sleepy Hollow and this great poem about the pumpkin. It all synchronizes into what we now have, the Jack or Lantern.
Correct.
Dre, your thoughts, please.
No, it's fine. No, but I think this is what this is there's a really powerful point in all this is that the point of what we call American adaptation, which is something that I think a lot of times we miss. The fact that cultures bring their own culture to America and the adaptation happens. So we go from turnips to pumpkins. We go from having it about one thing to have it being about another thing. And this is why you have to, and I think someone is in the comments, timelines matter. You have to look at where it was originated, what it means, see how it has evolved when other cultures are attached it to itself or attached to it. And then you see, oh, that's where this comes from. So all the jack-o'-lanterns are, which we've seen clearly, is just an American adaptation of Irish, Scottish, French immigrants coming to the New World between the 19th and the 20th century. That's all we really see.
Right, right. Absolutely. So let's get back to what IUIC was saying. Dre, if you could have the honors.
Yeah, of course. It says this is what IOIC says. They say, as Celtic pagans converted to the new religion of Christianity, not new, by the way, they did not forget their stories of the dead traveling to the afterworld on Halloween, nor did sightings and activities of fairies cease being reported. As more Celtic priests became Christian leaders and pastors, fairies, hobgoblins, vampires, werewolves, and virtually any other myth became the fallen angels of Christianity. The activities of Halloween, the making of charms, divining the future, the practice of magic, and dealing with unclean spirits and demons are explicitly forbidden.
Right. Right. Divining the future, practice of magic, right? Unclean spirits. Yeah, they're explicitly forbidden. Who was forbidden to do that in the Bible, Dre?
If last time I checked, that was Israel.
Israel.
Hmm.
You guys were doing all that stuff. All right. Wow. I wasn't calling up the witch of Endor. Solomon did.
Right.
Right. We wasn't participating in necromancy. You guys were. That's what they had to have laws against it to stop you guys from doing it.
Mm.
Please continue, Dre.
Sure. Halloween today, as IUIC tries to say, Halloween today, the wearing of costumes, for instance, and the roaming from door to door demanding treats can be traced to the Celtic period in the first few centuries of Christianity, when it was thought that the souls of the dead were out and around, along with fairies, witches, and demons. Sacrifices and or valuables were offered to satisfy them. The masqueraders went from house to house singing and dancing.
Right. Trace to the Celtic period. Oh, you mean trace to that unreliable, that thoroughly unreliable Mr. Keating?
Right.
That guy?
That
sure,
guy.
it's traced to him. Yeah. Absolutely. The idolatrous masks and costumes were a visible representation of the ghosts and goblins that lurked in the night. They would visit the neighboring village for offerings which belonged to the dead, or play tricks akin to the legendary destructiveness of witches and imps abroad this night, i.e., in the past, when this celebrator of Halloween came to a house, offerings had to be given in honor of the day, generally of something valuable or death and or punishment to the person who gave no tribute. This practice evolved into the present day trick or treats, and the masks have been transferred to the children who, in the United States, candy is given to them in the guise of saying trick or treat. So here's the problem with that, right? Again, they keep trying to bring this back to the Druids. There's a problem with them doing that, Dre. This is from Blood and Mistletoe, The History of the Druids in Britain by Ronald Hudson. If you could be so kind to read this for us.
Yeah, of course I can. The Druids may well have been the most prominent Magado religious specialists of some of the peoples of Northwest Europe just over a couple thousand years ago. And that is all we can say of them with reasonable certainty. They left no accounts of their beliefs and practices. And so our impressions of them depend ultimately on images produced in other cultures
They left
or
no what, Dre? They left no
they
what?
left no accounts
No
of their
account.
beliefs and practices. And so our impressions of them depend ultimately on images produced in other cultures or at later periods. These images are the foundation of all that follows in this book, the basic material from which later concepts of Druidry were constructed. They are vivid and compelling, which is why their effect has been so enduring. There are also, without exception, problematic, controversial, and possibly fallacious, and there is no sure way out of the problems that they present to a historian.
See, you can't connect anything to Druids because there's nothing to connect them to. No accounts. There's no liturgy. There's no artifacts. There's no old costumes, stele. There's no papyri. There's nothing. Nothing. Everything we know about the Druids comes from speculative fan fiction of ancient Ireland.
Yep.
By a historical hack by the name of Michael Keating. It's all
And
we
it's
got.
kind of like when it's kind of the way I can imagine this. It's kind of like when they try to make these cases and they use like from Babylon to Timbuktu or like the two Babylons. You know what I mean? It's like trying to connect all this history that we don't have. There's nothing we can go back and connect it to. It's all pseudo history, if you will.
Oh, my bad. It was Saul that summoned the witch. My bad. Good catch, Remy. Appreciate that. It was Saul that conjured up. Well, Saul that asked the witch to conjure it up. So yeah, it's crazy, man. It's there's nothing there. Like there's no there's nothing there.
There's nothing
So
there.
now let's talk about this thing about trick or treating, right? Let's do that. We're gonna go back to this book.
Yeah, let's do it.
By Lisa Martin. While it's tempting to draw connections between the New World's institutionalized begging ritual and earlier Old World traditions such as the masked house-to-house performances of the Grulaks or the Straw Boys, Guy Fawkes begging or souling, trick or treat probably sprang out of more recent antecedents. In New York City, of all places, Thanksgiving, now celebrated in the USA with a traditional turkey dinner on the fourth Thursday of November, was compared in the 1870s with Guy Fawkes Day. It had become a rowdy festival of thousands of boys organizing crews, similar to the Guy Fawkes crews who still parade in Lowe's each year, who are rewarded with gifts of money. Costumed children were also recorded going from house to house and begging food. So this was happening in New York in the early 1900s, but not on Halloween, Thanksgiving. All right.
Imagine.
Even more similar to trick or treating was a Christmas custom. No Halloween yet. Christmas.
No Halloween yet.
Called bell-snickling. What a name. Derived from a German mumming tradition known as Pelznickel. Bell-snickling was performed in the eastern areas of the USA and Canada and consisted of groups of costume participants moving from house to house, offering small tricks in exchange for treats of food and drink. In Nova Scotia, the bell-snickling performers deliberately frighten young children who might be asked if they have been good before being rewarded with a treat. Now, they're not asking for souls here, but are you good? All right. In one version of bell-snickling, what a name, bell-snickling, those whose houses were visited by the costume revelers were required to guess the identities of the disguised guests and had to hand over a treat to anyone who couldn't identify. This same custom appears in some early descriptions of trick or treat, lending credence to the possibility that it derived from its Christmas cousin.
Yes.
So you had no Halloween. So we have these kids running around in Thanksgiving and in Christmas, going door to door, trying to get some money, some food. Right?
Yep.
All right. I'll let you read this, Drake. Again.
No, it's fine. In fact, the earliest recorded uses of the actual phrase trick or treat in connection with Halloween comes from Alberta, Canada, where in 1927,
wait a minute,
1927.
Not in ancient Ireland with the Celtic Druids?
No, not in the 17th, not in the 7th century, man.
Oh, okay.
No, 1927. A newspaper article reported on pranksters demanding trick or treat at houses, although no mention of costuming is made. By the 1930s, the phrase in connection with Halloween and costumed children seemed to be working its way down through the northern USA, as states like Oregon reported that young goblins and ghosts employing modern shakedown methods successfully worked the trick or treat system.
Right. So the term doesn't get coined until the 1930s. Man. In the East Coast, Canada and New York.
Still relatively new term.
Very relatively new. Very. On the first national mentions of trick or treat appears in an article of 1939 entitled "A Victim of the Window Soaping Brigade," which both refers to trick or treat as the age-old Halloween salutation, and it makes it plain that the practice was a method of subverting rowdy pranking.
Mm-hmm.
Still, it wasn't until the Second World War, when rationing was over and luxuries like candy were once again readily available, that trick or treat finally spread throughout the entire USA. So this phenomenon occurred New York and Canada, late 1920s, 1930s, during Thanksgiving and Christmas, by a bunch of crews of dudes who were very rowdy, going around trying to get food and money.
Right.
But this evolved into trick or treating, which was to subvert said rowdy pranking. It actually was supposed to calm the kids down. That's what trick or treating was supposed to do. Instead of everybody just wilding out, they made a special day where the kids could dress up, and and now, because the Second World War is over, candy is at its all-time high, and now everybody's getting Snickers and Hershey bars.
That's crazy.
No druids, no Celtic, nothing.
No rituals, no sacrifices, none of that.
None.
None. And there's another theory that goes around. This is also in The Station of the Sun by Roland as well, where he talks about souling, where he talks about, this is another theory where you would have medieval Christians who would go door to door and pray for those who have lost loved ones. And so they would pray, and when they pray for loved ones, they would get food in return. In fact, there was a term for it. They called it soul cakes. And so they would take those, they would pray, the poor, those of you who are poor, they would pray for those who have lost loved ones. They would get the soul cakes back, and that's how they got food. So it was a way to, again, pray for those who have departed in the faith, and
Right.
they also help the needy, they help the poor at the same time.
Right. No, absolutely. So now, and I've said this a billion times, but it's worth repeating, and it's the issue really has to do with your intent.
Yes.
Right? Because they claim that if you participate in these things, you automatically are worshiping these gods. But one of my favorite scholars, Michael Heiser, he talks about this individual named Jordan Paper. This is what he says. I have read Paper's book on polytheism called The Gods Are Many. Jordan Paper is a practicing polytheist. He's retired now from teaching, but I still see him from time to time at SBL meetings. I know what he looks like. He's a practicing polytheist, and he was very transparent about his quote-unquote faith. This is a scholarly meeting. He's not holding anything back here. He says basically, this only works if you solicit this kind of contact. It doesn't just happen. You have to want it, and you have to do things to solicit it, and the powers. He would use these terms: the powers, the gods, the spirits will respond if you're open to their contact, to what they can do for you. And this was his faith. So here's a guy who actually did worship multiple gods, and he wrote a whole book about it. And what he is saying is, you have to be intentional if you're going to get in contact with these other beings.
Wow.
Right? You can't walk down the street, oops, trip, fall, idolatry. That's not how it works. Right? It's about intentionality.
Right.
And so when people say stuff like, well, if you participate in Halloween, or if you have a Christmas tree in your living room, you're somehow worshiping these various gods, right? What they're doing, unbeknownst to them, they're exposing that they have a very cheap sense of worship.
Yes, they do.
They don't understand what worship entails. Because if all I got to do is have children dressed up in funny costumes to worship a foreign deity, then all I got to do is wear a Jesus piece to be a Christian.
Right, literally.
That's all I got to do, right? It's that simple. But but when you say it that way, it's absurd, right? Well, of course, just because you wear a chain don't mean exactly.
Okay, exactly.
That's the point. you guys are exposing that you have a cheap sense of worship. Because to worship any god, whether it's Yahweh or some alleged Celtic god or Zeus or Horus, all that requires intentionality. You
Yes.
solicit and welcome, asking. You're doing it on purpose to be one with this whatever being that you're talking about.
Right.
It
And
takes
that's pretty much,
intentionality.
and that's the biggest thing when it comes to, and I think that's what IOIC lucky they lack, is this idea of, if you actually worship these things, then yeah, you are practicing an idolatry. And the truth of the matter is, if they're going to claim to be Israelites, they should know a thing or two about intentional worship, because that's all their history is. The intentional worship of going to pagan gods, going to the gods of other nations, and intentionally worshiping the gods and intentionally turning away from the God of Israel. So if anybody should know about intentionally worshiping pagan gods, it should be them,
Right.
not the average person on the street. But the very thing that they want to claim, that's the very thing that they kind of put to the side, is that intentionality piece, right? And again, like you said, I think someone said in the comments too, you know, if you tie your shoes, then that must mean you're worshiping your shoes, because what,
Right.
you're
Because
just
you're
bowing
bowing.
down.
Right. Right.
You're
Right.
bowing down
Right.
to your shoe, right? And I had to explain this to a Hebrew Israelite during Christmas time, where they like to associate the tree with being an idol. And their response to me literally was, if you bow when you put presents under the
Right. You're
Christmas
bowing to the
tree,
tree.
you're
Right.
bowing
Right.
down to the
Right.
tree. And it's like, well, don't you change the tire in your car? And they're like, yeah. Are you worshiping your car because you bow down to worship to change the tire on your car? They're like, no, that's absurd. Then you saying me bowing down to pick up presents from a tree is worship, but then the tire is absurd. Then they like to pick and choose what's worship and what's not. And like you said, that's a very cheap sense of what worship looks like.
Because imagine, right? Halloween rolls around, and you go see little Tommy and Susan and Malik with they're dressed like the Avengers, and you go to them and be like, "Hey, guys and girls, why are you worshiping on Shaolin?" They're gonna be like, "I didn't see that
Huh?
movie. Who's Shaolin again?
Right.
Did he fight Iron Man? Like, who's Shaolin? I
Right.
don't. I missed that movie. Like, who you talking? They don't know who you talking about.
They
But that's not
don't.
the intent.
No.
It's not the
and like
intent, man.
and like you said earlier, where, because of course, again, a couple things you see is that, number one, this whole, I had explained this to somebody a couple days ago. You have to, if you're going to associate something is pagan in origin, right, you have to look at the history of it all. You can't just go by what has been secularized or Americanized. And I think that's what IOIC does, unfortunately, very, very well. They take what it looks like now and they say, well, if it looks like this now, that must be what it looks like back then. I'm like,
Right,
dude, that's anachronism. You can't do that. You
right.
can't say it looks like this now and then think that's what it was back then. Look at look at where it started, see how it got here. But of course, that requires work. And if you don't want
Yep,
to put in the work, you're going to
yep.
say whatever you want to say.
No, absolutely, man. So that's what's on their website. And when you
Hmm.
go into history, um, they've been weighed and measured, and they've been found wanting. You know. so, so again, anytime you hear any of these arguments, please feel free to show them this video because we
Yes.
literally address what's on their website just now.
Hmm.
So,
Yes.
but with
And
that
and
being
I
said, Dre, yeah, go
and I
ahead.
and I was gonna say one last thing, and I'll
Go
say this
for it.
too. Show them this video, and I'll even say this too. If there is anyone, and they don't have to be an IUIC, where they say everything you said in this video is a load of malarkey, right? I would just simply have two words for you: prove it.
That's it.
You know, prove it. Prove that the sources that we brought out tonight are not reliable. They're not primary sources. They're not historical sources. What sources do you have to prove that Halloween is pagan in origin? What sources do you have? What scholars, what historians, what do you have to say that these historians say, oh no, it is rooted in Samhain and it is rooted in
Right.
the dead and sacrifices. And if you have those, bring them forward, and we can
And
always
listen, if
break it
you
down.
bring the two Babylons, you're gonna get
Don't
beat
bring
up
the two
for that book.
Babylons.
Don't do
Don't
that.
bring from Babylon Timbuktu.
Don't bring that Hislop. Don't bring
Don't bring
Alexander
that
Hislop here.
because even secular historians have agreed that Hislop is completely unreliable.
Because that's the first thing they're gonna do. They're gonna bring that book. So
Yep.
you know.
But that's all. That's my challenge to them personally.
Well, that's great. That's great. And as we come to a close, Dre, some final thoughts from you, sir.
Man, first off, this was a great video. We're very studied on this topic. Halloween at the bottom, at the very foundation of all of it, is really a conviction issue at its most simplest form. If you feel that you don't want to celebrate Halloween, even after everything that we've shown you, guess what? If that's what the Holy Spirit is leading you to do, don't do it. Don't celebrate it. That's
Right.
completely up to you. The Bible
Right.
talks about how we have freedom. One esteems one day higher than another. That's Romans 14. So if you feel like you don't want to celebrate it, that's fine. But if after this day you go, you know what? I want to celebrate Halloween. There's no evil in it. Go for it. And may the Lord bless and keep you. But
Right.
I would like to kind of close with this. Don't make your personal convictions someone else's convictions.
Right.
You know what I mean? Don't do that. That is not what God gave. He gave you that conviction. He didn't give your brother or sister that conviction. You know what I mean? So be led by your convictions. Be led by what the Holy Spirit is telling you. If you choose to celebrate Halloween, great. If not, that's great too. And that's what I'll close with that.
Good stuff, man. So yeah, they're telling me that I gotta bring you back again, bro.
Oh, as much as you'll allow me, man.
You passed the audition, man. That's good. That's good. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it's Rated B by Dre and BK signing off. Peace.
What's going on? It's your boy, Rated B by Dre, the B standing for biblical. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a like. Go ahead and hit the notification bell. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe. It's free. We have tons of content here on the Rated B by Dre channel, tons of biblical content. That's what the B stands for, right? If you didn't see the previous episode, why don't you go ahead and take a look at that. And as always, thank you so much for your support. I love each and every one of you, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.
In a tomb with a grave. I've seen pastors fall for a platform and praise. Chasing algorithms, not ancient of days. Flipping verses like flips in a real estate pitch. But the word don't bend even under the rich. I don't argue for clout, I contend for